Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here at this time. Stephanie, we're very excited to hear your presentation. So before we get started, I just kind of want to go over the ground rules, go over what to expect. Stephanie, you'll be making your presentation with your PowerPoint slides that you've already showed us. And you'll have about 25 to 35 minutes to complete your presentation. Afterwards, Dr. Robinson and I will ask you some questions. And then after that, you'll have an opportunity to ask us some questions if you have any then, okay? I want you to relax, enjoy this time. This isn't anything that should be stuff that you don't already know. We wouldn't let you get to this point unless we knew that you were able to do this, so we're really excited to see what you have. Before we start, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, Dr. Robinson, anything you want to add?
Not yet. I'm just ready to see the presentation.
Okay, super. So we'll hold all our comments till the end, and I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Fiore and Dr. Robinson. Go ahead and share the screen. So first, I want to thank you both for being here and your support thus far in the development. I'm very excited to begin the research, and I hope this proposal gives you just a better understanding of the study. The proposed title for this preliminary oral defense and the research is Exploring the Implementation of Synchronous Student Support Sessions and Student Retention in an Online Course. Next slide, please. So I want to start off with a brief background as a primary researcher, just to give you an understanding where my commitment to this research comes from. I began my early education as a traditional classroom teacher, and I had experiences in many different roles in a traditional K-6 setting. I then obtained an educational leadership degree, and I had the opportunity to see from a different perspective through the lens of a leadership administrator. And then I was able to experience several new settings after that who truly shape who I am as an educator. My point in telling you this is I had unique roles that allowed me to see education changing, and it allowed me to see several roles where we needed to look and refine practices in education. And this truly serves as my personal interest and the foundation of this study. The bottom right hand shows 4 broad umbrella areas in general education that are most important to me. And these key areas truly helped decide on my passion for this research. So next slide. So I'm going to jump right into it. So I really wanted to let you know the problem statement first. So data from 2000, a report done in 2018 on distance education in the United States shows that online learning enrollments increased. And this is the 14th straight year that online learning enrollments increased. So being an educator with my background coming from a traditional setting to online learning, I noticed that my new online learning, I lost some students. And I seemed to lose more students than I did in the traditional classroom. So I became intrigued by this, and I really wanted to know how to lose less students. In looking at the preliminary research for this proposal, I found that several studies showed that online learning environments have lower retention rates than traditional learning environments. So the general problem that I'm proposing for this research is the concern over student retention in online higher education. Very specifically, more specifically, I would like to look at and address the problem of lower retention at the institution where I teach currently. The institution has deemed student retention as a focus as a result of program review, and it's very concerning to me as a reflective practitioner in this learning environment. But it's also very concerning to the general population of online learners and institutions that are offering this online learning. Next slide, please. So what we do know supporting the problem is that we know online learning populations are increasing. We know that we live in a global digital society. There's been a 5% increase in students who are taking at least one course. So while there's this rise in enrollment, there is lowered retention rates. And this is concerning to the learning population, especially as this learning population continues to grow and diversify. So the online learning rate at the proposed institution that was reported in 2013 is actually 42%. So in looking at this program review, the reporting research shows us that many students lack the resources they need to be successful with online learning. So additionally, supporting this is the fact that we know these online supports have to be consistent, structured, and readily available to the students. When we look at this enrollment alongside those lower retention, there's a growing concern in the effectiveness in online learning. Thus, it's a concern as our population continues to, again, plummet upward and diversify. So not only does completing this education, online higher education degree, when we're not completing it, it has obviously societal and economic impacts. We want to recruit and train these and retain these online learners for the success not only of our learners, but of our institutions. So increasing student retention in online learning can result in a better online education, ultimately improving societal views on the learning approach, making it more viable and respected higher education component. So what I found was many researchers have focused on student retention in online learning interventions, but there's such a gap in and need to further study what works in online learning, what tools and strategies and supports are put in place for this diversified population that I'm speaking of. So I would like to explore if virtual student support sessions ultimately impact student retention. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this proposed study is to examine if courses with synchronous student support sessions, and I sometimes say student support sessions, sometimes leave that off, but ultimately if this real-time synchronous support session impacts student retention in an early childhood education course at the proposed institution. I plan to compare the retention rates for an early childhood education course with virtual synchronous student support sessions alongside the same course without a synchronous student support session component. So both will have the asynchronous element for the students. One will have synchronous support sessions, and one will have the option not to have synchronous support sessions. Next slide, please. So we really want to dial back and look at the theoretical framework behind the foundation of this research. So both the theory of constructivism and the theory of andragogy can be used to understand high quality, student-centered, supportive learning environments. We know this from traditional education. What we want to see is this online learning environment that socially integrates and engages students in active learning and supports their success. So in a student-centered, innovative constructivism classroom, there's a shared responsibility. There's an intrinsic motivating factor for learners. And as a result of this, they are more vested in their learning. They are taking ownership for their actions. In the constructivist model, there's active engagement in the learning and individualized instruction, where this instructor, this key player, this instructor acts as a guide, a real-time guide for the learning process. Implementing the constructivist model in online learning could be advantageous to the learning process, and it could support retention rates in higher education. The second part of this is the theory of andragogy. So the demographics of the online learning population have transformed, and it includes many non-traditional students. So these non-traditional students, and I'll tell you more about the specific population in just a minute, but these non-traditional students possess unique characteristics. They must have an active partnership in their learning. They must take charge of their learning, but they need that external support that's not evident in the asynchronous environment. As a matter of fact, a study in 2014 by Milgrave showed that online adult learners preferred interactive learning. They preferred live discussions and immediate video, audio access to enhance their learning experience. So the theoretical framework is very crucial as we move forward. Yes, next slide, please. So let's dial back. Let's go way back. Online learning. Man, it has evolved since the giant computer in a room with one person behind it. Historically, online learning included primarily asynchronous interactions, with the information transfer just going from the instructor to the student. It was very one-directional. This limitation hindered the effectiveness and drove improvements in our technology use, in our strategies, in our methods, in our instruction, and now can include asynchronous and synchronous bidirectional tools to support students. So, as reported by the data, the online learning community continues to grow, and I'm going to hit this over and over, and includes these diverse learning populations. Historically, our traditional college students have been 18 to 24. They've entered college directly out of high school. They've lived on or near campuses. They've attended college full-time. They have college social life, and schooling is really their primary focus. Well, this new demographic has shifted, and it now includes non-traditional students who are older and they have additional responsibilities outside of school. And often they have great experiences that supplement their learning. So the asynchronous environment is very characteristic of online learning today, and it's very well researched. And for many students, our adult learners have those priorities. There are other priorities in their life where asynchronous learning works really well for them. However, synchronous support sessions could be what online students need for better engagement in their learning. Understanding how online learning can support the flexibility, how online learning can support student learning, development, and retention is crucial for creating high quality, effective online instruction for our populations. Next slide, please. So the research question, strengthening student success in online learning is important for producing well-educated, technically literate citizens. Online higher education retention rates must be improved to better validate the credibility of this learning platform when compared to traditional institutions. Creating a structured online environment, including the asynchronous virtual sessions and synchronous virtual sessions that center on interactions, bidirectional interactions, active learning, and student-centered support could address several of the issues that online learners face and are challenged by. So the research question to be addressed in this study is, what is the difference between retention rates of early childhood education courses with synchronous support sessions as compared to retention rates in early childhood education courses without synchronous support sessions? As you can see, the null hypothesis has been identified. Next slide, please. So as we look towards the sample and the population for this proposed study, the proposed study population is undergraduate students enrolled at the selected institution. The institution is regionally accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, Senior College and University Commission, and they offer a wide range of degree programs designed with a high population of adult learners. The online undergrad classes are 5-week classes. So students enrolled in the proposed course for the study are of mixed age, mixed experiences, mixed gender and ethnicity. The selected population is appropriate for the study because, number one, it is convenient, it's accessible, and it reflects the focus of online learners and efforts to improve retention along this population. So the information gathered in this study will include retention rates of an early childhood education course that is offering student support sessions, and the same course that does not offer the support sessions. Canvas is the learning management system tool used, and each week an announcement, actually 2 times a week, will be used to post the dates and times of the student support sessions throughout this 5-week course. Bi-weekly announcements and reminders will be there to inform students of the specific date and time of the synchronous support sessions that will be offered to supplement their asynchronous learning. The sessions will be available to all students, and they are free. The students proposed in this study are placed in the course based on the enrollment, based on their scheduling and the requirements of their program. So each entry into a synchronous student support session will be counted by the researcher, by myself, as participating in the session. So the sessions will be individualized based on students' needs and will include individualized and differentiated instruction, just like the traditional class setting. They'll be real time. There will be there will be room for bi-directional interactions that take place in real time and help students understand specific needs immediately. That instant communication will be provided for them. This is to provide students with a level of support that's timely in their busy schedules, that is specific, and that really meets their needs, their experiences, their learning styles, as well as what they truly need. I want to end this slide by saying a power analysis was done already to determine the study's sample size. And based on the power analysis conducted in G-Power, it showed that the sample size for this particular study needed to be 26 courses. And that would yield a power that could be generalized to the greater population. So again, 26 courses for this. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this analysis, the independent variable is the synchronous student support sessions, and the dependent variable is course retention rates. So for this study, both the independent and dependent variables are numeric variables because they have values described in a measurable quantity. The data for this study will be collected by the university's dedicated assessment team, and it will be shared with the researcher after IRB approval and all proper approvals are in place for a quantitative evaluation using a later chosen statistics program. So each course retention rate is generally reported as an average. So student retention will then be measured using past data and whether or not the student successfully completed the course. Well, the course retention rates are going to be reported as an A, B, C, or D, and all those will be considered passing for the nature of this study. I would propose an ex post facto approach be used because we are using existing data. This has already occurred and we want to gather that data and analyze the data from there. And then finally, the relationship between the synchronous support sessions and course retention, as well as those not offering it, will be what will be analyzed in this proposed study. Next slide, please. So as I said, a quantitative approach is proposed for this study, and it will just allow me, the researcher, to gather retention data in a numeric manner to address the research question. So the study is going to include collecting that data from an early childhood education course that was already identified, and 26 sections of that will be chosen, selected in a random manner, and data will be collected from the university assessment team to provide course completed data. This will be archival data, and it will be used because it's already gathered. It is valid, it is reliable, it is timely, and is accessible. An ex post facto approach is also proposed for this study because archival data will be used. Okay, next slide, please. So limitations, this study does have some limitations that I am well aware of, and I do think we can work through. One limitation is the small population of early childhood education students that are enrolled in the selected education course. While this is a limitation, conducting research on this course will just provide us basic insight and provide data to better understand if these student support sessions do have an impact on retention for future use. So this information can be used on a broader scale by university officials so that we can develop strategic plans as well as impact possibly the future of online learning with this supplemental synchronous support to asynchronous components that are already there. So another limitation of this study is that there's one instructor for this study. Obviously, I will be the one that is instructing these synchronous support sessions. And while this is a limitation, this is nothing that is different than traditional classroom teacher quality, for lack of a better term. This motivation can impact the quality of the instruction given. However, teacher quality is always a factor to consider in retention rates. So that is something that across the board is going to be consistent. Finally, the last limitation that I see is that there may be outside variables in online learning. I talked a little bit about the demographics of the non-traditional students having different priorities and have different routines and daily lives, as opposed to those students who come straight out of high school and it might just have the focus of schooling. This could potentially be a limitation because our online students might have employment schedules, financial constraints, or student commitments that ultimately could impact retention. That I do see that as something that could be a limitation for the study and does need to be considered upon analysis. Next slide, please. So online education success depends on retention. It depends on student retention, which at this time is a growing concern in online education. Research on the support methods that impact student retention is sparse in online education. Previous studies look at the lack of implementation-specific tools, and it's really lacking in viable solutions that support this online learning, this student retention and online learning. So this proposed study is proposed to explore if implementing these synchronous student support sessions that use those theories, those solid theories of constructivism and andragogy could increase retention. So online universities ultimately could use this study model to develop their strategic plans and their action plans for student retention. Next slide, please. So at this point, I'm going to pause and I'm going to welcome any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Stephanie. Very well done. Dr. Robinson, I will let you ask some questions first if you have any.
Absolutely. Stephanie, do you need to take a drink first?
Breathe.
That was,
thank you.
Yeah, breathe, take a drink. So this is most certainly a very timely proposal with the amount of students going online and the popularity of being online. And so I have a few questions. How did you choose this particular topic? What was the aha or the spark that said, oh, student retention, and here's how I'm going to study this?
Yeah, great question. In my dissertation planning classes, one statement that really kind of has always stuck with me is you have to love what you're studying, because you really do get to know it and you really have to dive deep with it and you really form a relationship with it. So as I look back to my introduction slide, I had those 4 key words at the bottom. And truly the first one of those key phrases was the power of one. And the reason I chose this is I was losing students in online learning and I needed to know why. And I wasn't understanding why I was doing the same thing, very similar teaching style to what I did in my traditional setting. So when I started to lose online learners, I really questioned what practices I could implement and put into place to help bring those students through to positive retention success. So in thinking about this, I started to explore how to help these students. And there wasn't much out there. There was, but it often had to do with something that was out of my control. Implementing synchronous student support sessions was in my control, so it really became an interest to me. And also, I was looking for an answer. And in all the literature review, there was no answers. So it really became up to me as the researcher to figure out the answer.
Very reflective. Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay, so my next question then is about your framework. And so you brought up that the synchronous sessions would have that bi-directional engagement with students. So in your framework, you considered the constructivism and andragogy. I'm wondering if you thought about social interaction theory.
Yes, I did. Actually, that was a component that was connected to constructivism. And when I thought about it, I really thought that is another theory that can absolutely be brought in. And to be honest with you, can be seen and evident in constructivism. While I was looking for the broad scope of theories, I really chose to select the 2 just because I wanted to go deeper with those theories rather than surface. So I think that theory is just another one that supplements the need for the social interaction and the bidirectionalism. Mm-hmm. Great
Excellent,
point.
excellent. Okay, one more question and then I will turn it over. For data collection, I'm just a little confused. When you talk about the 26 sessions, are you talking about 26 sessions with synchronous video and then 26 sessions without for a total of 52 collection classroom points?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I did the power analysis, what that showed was that to have a valid experiment, I would need 26 courses total. So given the average of approximately 11 students a course yielded the results on that. So there actually be 26 complete courses completed in the study. There will be 13 that have been conducted without the support sessions. And then 13 later that were conducted with the support sessions. So there's actually 13 both ways to account for the 26.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie. Todd, I'll turn it over to you. Or Dr. Fiore, sorry.
Thank you. No, that's all right. We're all friends. Stephanie, I think this is a very well done proposal. Your presentation was excellent, so I want to commend you for that. I have a couple of questions. One is related to what Dr. Robinson just said. Just to clarify, the courses that have the video support tied to them, are all the students required to take part in that, or is that just that some of the students in the class would be taking part in that?
Yeah, that's a great discussion. And to be honest with you, I would love your feedback here on what you think. I think that ultimately, my goal is to post 2 announcements a week, one at the beginning of the learning week, which occurs on a Tuesday, and one towards the end of the learning week, which will be Saturday or Sunday, because students typically have an assignment due on Monday. So if I can catch them early on in their learning week with the announcement, I can offer them support on their discussions. And then later on in the week, when they're working on the assignments and they've kind of veered their focus towards the assignments, I will offer them that. So ultimately, there will be 2 support sessions a week. They will be posted in the announcement. Now, one of the things I thought about as the researcher is also reaching out to students individually who might be struggling and who could be in the gray area for retention, and just offering them that additional level of support in a more personalized manner. So maybe sending them an email that says, "Hey, Dr. Fiore, I noticed I noticed last week you had a difficult time constructing your lesson plan. Here's an article on standards. In addition, I'm offering a support session on Friday of this learning week." So to be honest with you, I am really not sure. At a minimum, there will be an announcement offering it to them as a voluntary session 2 days a week. But I also have thought about offering it to students on a more individualized manner.
Okay. I think, and you asked me my thoughts, I think one thing to consider is that a lot of times students that attend online or are drawn to online do so in particular because they like the asynchronous format. You mentioned yourself that a lot of non-traditional students have busy schedules. We know we've worked with students in the military or that have different type of obligations that make a synchronous session difficult. So you just may want to consider ways to accommodate those students as well that may not be able to make one or the two. The other thing you might want to consider is what threshold of participation you might include, or you might that might be needed to consider that a support session course. For instance, if you offer this every week but only one student takes advantage of it, is that going to meet your threshold? So that's just something to think about and something to consider. Okay.
Those are great points. I will write them down and consider
that. So you defined, you talked a little bit about student success, and student success has really 2 components if you look at the literature. One would be from an institutional point of view. So like you're talking about student retention, student persistence. But there's also the individual point of view. So the student themselves has their own definition of success. It might be their grade point average. It might be their progression towards their degree. Did you consider looking at any variables tied to individual student success?
I did. I actually had the same mindset as you did. What I found though is within the confines of collecting the data, I found it might be more difficult to collect individual student data just due to respect for privacy and university policies. So I was very hesitant to look and present individual data. I think you bring up a great point though, in the fact that success is truly defined in so many different ways. So I think it's crucial within my paper when I go forward to go and really in the chapter 2, I really want to think about that definition of student success. And after, as I'm writing the report, make sure that is in there clearly, that for the sake of this study, success is just attached to student retention and no other variables. But yeah, great thought.
Okay. And, again, in chapter 1 in the definition of terms section, you might create your own definition of student success so the reader knows what to expect. So,
Chapter 1 definition of terms. Perfect. Thank you for that. I think I goofed into chapter 2.
So one more question. Many times, as a student, I'm sure you get asked all the time by your friends and colleagues, hey, what are you writing your dissertation about? What are you doing? What's your topic? If you could sum up your presentation and your proposed study in like a 30-second elevator pitch, what would you tell me, or what would you tell somebody that asked you, hey, what's your study about?
It's a great question. Online learning is truly becoming a wave of the future. And with online learning, we have this whole new diverse student population. Our retention in online learning is not showing as great of rates as traditional learning. So my study is looking to see if the offering of real live support sessions for students makes a difference on them being successful and having a better retention or a positive retention rate in the course that they're taking.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Dr. Robinson, typically at this point, we might confer individually about whether or not Stephanie would be moving past this point. Unless you have any objections, I feel comfortable that she did a great job. And
I'm absolutely confident in Stephanie moving forward.
Okay, super. Stephanie, congratulations. You've passed your preliminary oral defense. So the next step for you is to make sure that you upload a copy of your PowerPoint presentation to DSEM. And there'll be one of the selections that there's information on that in the handbook. And then Dr. Robinson and I will approve within DSEM. And then you'll officially be able to move on to the next step, which is let's start looking at an IRB application and getting your data and going from there. So I want to offer you the chance to ask any questions you might have, though. Do you have any questions?
Just a quick question. Is DSEM, you said I can find more information on that in the handbook. That's how I can find where to access it? In
the dissertation handbook, in the step-by-step information is where you can find how to do that. DSEM is the same system that you uploaded your letter of intent to. So that's just where we officially approve it. The other good part about passing your preliminary oral defense is that your future dissertation terms, you'll now have the $500 support fee removed. So you just made yourself some money there, or saved yourself some money by getting this done. But I had no question that you'd be able to. You've done a great job so far, and I really look forward to the results from your study, because I do think it's timely, and I think this is important information. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson and Dr. Fiore. Again, your support throughout this process has been amazing. So I really couldn't have done it without you.
I'm excited to see your results.
Me too.
Sure.
So that being the case, that will conclude our preliminary oral defense here. And congratulations again, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for your time.